To introduce myself, my name is Shane Breen, and I am the Training and Events Manager for Keeler USA. Keeler University is our education platform that provides useful information to aid physicians, technicians, and our partners to navigate their daily challenges. As we all know, there has not been a more challenging time than now. On behalf of Keeler USA, I'd like to thank you for joining our webinar this evening, and I would also like to thank you for your ongoing efforts to help keep us safe and our eyes healthy. Please feel free to write comments, daily challenges that you're facing in your office. If you have any questions and you'd like to have them answered at the end of the webinar, please select the blue question mark in the chat box at the bottom, and these will be flagged for our presenters to answer at the end. Make sure to stick around after the question and answers section to see a special promo code for attending this webinar. At this time, I'd like to bring on our president, Eva. Thank you for joining. Eva?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Shane. I'm Eva Kasanovic, president at Keeler USA, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all and thank you very much for joining this webinar. Keeler USA is excited to have partnered with Olleyes, as both companies are aligned to bring exciting new technologies and solutions to the eye care world. Working with the team at Olleyes and of course the fabulous Dr. Alberto Gonzalez has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to this first webinar and a future in this collaboration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's also a pleasure for us to join forces, and we have always admired your work, and hopefully we can make a better and provide better care for all the peoples.
Wonderful. That's fabulous. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jay Katz from Wills Eye Hospital, who is a moderator in this evening event. Specializing in glaucoma, he has over 30 years of experience in both clinical practice and research. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Katz. Please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, Eva and Shane, for hosting tonight's program, and thanks very much to Keeler for putting this together. As virtually all of you must know, Keeler's been around for over a century with really a very strong reputation for excellence. And it really says something that they've chosen to partner with Olleyes in introducing an exciting new technology, the head-mounted Perimetry visual function unit, VISUALL. And we have 3 guest speakers tonight to acquaint you with this new technology and its development. Before we get to that, Shane, can you bring up, we have 3 questions for the audience that we've had up earlier, and some of you have already answered, but let's get as many of you to answer this as possible. The first one is your practice currently offering telemedicine? The next question, has your practice had any difficulty performing perimetry safely in this era of COVID? And the third question, has your practice received a demo for virtual reality perimetry? Okay, thank you for participating in that questionnaire. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panel tonight for their presentations and discussion. And hopefully, if we have questions, we can entertain those at the end after the presentation. Our first speaker is Dr. Alberto Gonzalez. He is the CEO of Olleyes, and he really is the brainchild for the development of the technology that we're going to hear about. And I have a question for you, Alberto, to kick off. Is why did you develop the VISUALL? And is it for office and or home use? What was the thinking behind it?
Thank you very much for your introduction, Jay. In answer to your question, I have always been amazed by the work done by the people Humphrey or Zeiss and Octopus, especially, although many others have done also a terrific job with the building the perimetry. but especially this too, is my understanding that they probably have one of the largest reference database ever in medicine. And it always amazed me, all the statistics and all what you can really get out of that little report, right? And how playing with different algorithms, you can improve the testing, you can tweak the time, and had more better results from your patients. I remember going into your office and asking, how long do you think we're gonna have more visual fields? And you say, forever. And that's true. Even if we are in an era of going into objectivity on the data, we all perceive the world totally different. So even though we had autorefractors since, I think it's late 60s, we're still asking, right, better here, better there, because each of us, we have a complete different perception of the world. So we believe at Olleyes that psychophysics of vision will last at least long enough for us. And that's why we decided to implement and work in this part of the eye science. I'm not sure. Okay. The visual, it's a platform, right? And it's a platform that is developed specifically to fit or to solve the current issues that doctors have in their office currently, to provide a better automation of the process, to bring comfortability, right, to the patients. And by this, we can probably increase the accuracy of the results. To bring also the psychophysical tests, specifically visual field and many others, to remote areas where patients cannot be tested currently, like the army, or patients that are having trouble getting into the office because they are in rural areas. But also to improve the efficiency of the doctor at the office. One of the advantages of this platform is that because it's mobile, you can be more dynamic in your office flow. With all this, we can decrease, of course, the cost of the test. We have two main models: the office-based and the home-based. And the platform itself is divided in three main components: the cloud, where we store, of course, all the data, where all the analytics happens; the web app, that is the tools that the doctor will use to access the data of the patient, to prescribe the test, to monitor the tests, and of course the headset, and the handpiece, which is the part of the system that the patients interact with. The office space, it can be seen as a in-house or local system, although we also like to call it still remote, because you can have it in different parts of the office and you don't have to be present during the process of testing in order to be present on the testing where the test is being done. And to this platform, then you can add unlimited amount of VISUALL-H, which is, of course, the one that is going to be used outside the office, whether at home, whether in a retail space, anywhere outside the office. Within the platform currently, we have three main group of tests. We have the Perimetry, of course, which is the core of the platform and the one that most people knows this about. But we also have visual acuity. And a few weeks ago, we partnered with Wagner. We're very proud to work together with them to bring in the color testing. They have an amazing experience in this branch of the psychophysics, so we believed it was appropriate to work together with them. The reports are very similar to the current reports that all doctors have in their office. This is done on purpose. Again, I started this presentation saying I'm a big fan of visual fields and the way it is done. We believe it's efficient enough. It doesn't need to be changed at all. And of course, it's in the practical sense, it also help for doctors to look into this report. We did a correlation study at Wills, but Dr. Myers will talk more in detail about it. And we also are doing visual acuity. The visual acuity, it's a very interesting story. We have had, we started doing supposedly infinitive projection of the optotypes, and we ended up knowing that it was actually a near visual acuity. Then we used different tricks in order to confuse the brain and being able to mimic the distance that we were required to test the patients. Reimbursement-wise, there's no difference. You can use this platform with the regular perimetry and color testing codes. I guess the change now is the remote monitoring of visual function. In 2019, January 2019, CMS included 3 new codes for the remote physiologic monitoring of for chronic management. These are not specific codes for perimetry, not even for eye care. This is a global actually code that includes any kind of remote physiologic monitoring parameters, and have been used for pulse oximetry, for blood pressure, for intraocular pressure, and for visual field testing and other psychophysics of vision. This is sort of what we wanted to present today. Hopefully it answered most of the questions, but if at the end you have more, which I totally expected, please, it will be our pleasure to answer. Dr. Katz.
Thank you so much, Alberto. So as a clinician, we're faced with the office flow often being inefficient. We all know that reimbursements are decreasing for visits, for testing specifically in other areas. The patient office visits are often consuming time. They're expensive for the system, and nowadays, with looking at perimetry, it can be somewhat risky with COVID. And there are all these issues about how you clean various devices within the office, including perimeters. And telehealth has been at the forefront of medicine even before COVID. It's being more and more adopted for a variety of reasons, and it's been accelerated by the pandemic that currently is across the world. But we really have had a paucity of really good tools that we could implement telemedicine, and that includes ophthalmology. But I think units like VISUALL really offer us another opportunity to really carefully look at how we can offer care, perhaps in a more timely fashion, efficient fashion in the office, taking up less space, less technical time, and also perhaps extending some of the testing normally associated with the office to a home-based model where more testing can be done at the discretion of the patient. So with that, I'd like to jump in and get our next speaker up. Our next speaker is Dr. Jonathan Myers, who is the director of the glaucoma service at Wills Eye Hospital, associate professor at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. And before Jonathan starts, I'd like to ask him, as an academic, guy in a teaching institution, you get to view all sorts of new things, new diagnostic tools. How do you evaluate all these new technologies before you incorporate it into clinical practice? Jonathan?
Thanks, Jay. As you well know, one of the fun things about being in an academic practice is you often get to try these things first. And sometimes we get to try them when they're beta, sometimes they're closer to alpha, and sometimes they're finished products. And because we have both an academic side where we can test these things against prior standards or against known other issues, and we have a busy practice, we can also get a sense for how they work for our patients in an almost real-world setting, albeit it is an academic practice. So I'm happy to have the chance to talk a little bit about some of the academic type testing we've had the opportunity to do with the visual head mount perimetry. Now, this was headed up by my friend and colleague, Dr. Reza Razajinejad, who looked at essentially 102 eyes, 50 eyes that were normal eyes that had been fully examined, and it was all eye disease was excluded, and 52 eyes that had mild and moderate glaucoma, about 2/3 mild glaucoma with a average defect mean deviation about 2.7 decibels, and about 1/3 moderate glaucoma with an average defect of closer to -10 decibels. So he created, with our help, a large group of eyes and then really characterized them compared to Humphrey 24-2 C to standard for each patient, for each eye, and then against other known parameters. Looking at the next slide at some of his data, just looking at the basics, when we think about perimetry, when we think about the sensitivity of the retina and the visual system to light, we know that unfortunately as we get older, our eyes tend to become less sensitive across the visual field to light. And we can see the mean sensitivity here, same scale, same axes, of the visual versus the Humphrey C to standard, the exact same slope, the change in sensitivity with age in the normal group shown here, very, very similar data between the two groups. So that's sort of just a overall general comparison of the two units in the broadest sense among the normals. Moving to the next slide, we see really getting the meat of the matter, how well were the two units, the Humphrey and the visual, able to discriminate the receiver operator curve, discriminate between the glaucoma and the normals. Again, 2/3 of the glaucoma group in the mild with a mean deviation of -2.7. You can see that both instruments really have an excellent ability to discriminate between normal patients and patients with mild to moderate field loss. It happens that the ROC curve for the visual here was about 98%, really better than I would have expected in this group of mainly mild glaucoma patients. Very good results from the Humphrey at about 93%, but the p-value here is only 0.06 in this group of 102 eyes, so it's not statistically significant, but certainly there is no sense that the visual was performing worse in this particular group of eyes. Looking further at this data as we go to the next slide, thank you. You can see the mean sensitivity, again, graphed for the glaucoma group of the visual on the y-axis versus the Humphrey on the x-axis on your slide left. You can see, again, pretty good correlation across the two instruments with a very linear relation of the two. And in the Bland-Altman plot on slide right, you can see that the difference of the sensitivity of the Humphrey minus the visual, the difference in their sensitivity for the field versus the average of the sensitivity for each field, the Bland-Altman plot, really shows about a difference of about 2.5 decibels, covering 95% of all of the patients. What this tells us is that these things are very well correlated. In fact, when you looked at the correlation values for each quadrant of the glaucoma group, they were quite high, between 0.6 and 0.8 for all the quadrants for the averages of patients. So again, really a robust correlation. We can go back one more slide, sorry, before we move on. Robust correlation between these two devices. And in fact, Dr. Reza looked at a host of other issues, and I'm pleased to report that his work was just accepted for publication in the Journal of Glaucoma. And you'll be able to see all the nitty-gritty details coming out very soon, and much more in-depth analysis. So I'm excited about the use of this perimeter potentially in the office, because as Jay and Alberto said, it saves space, it saves technician time, it's great for ergonomic reasons. There are a lot of clinical reasons it's great, but I'm excited also because of some of the technologies that they're putting into this device involving improved fixation loss treatment, where if the patient's fixation is within 15 degrees, they're still testing, but they're just moving the point to wherever the patient's fixation has moved, just as long as it's within still 15 degrees. So it's not that we count fixation losses. It's not that we stop the test. We just go on with the test as long as they're close. And if they're outside 15 degrees, the fixation monitor just stops the test, and a prompt comes up to the patient, hey, refixate, let's go. So it's that sort of technical innovation that makes me excited about this, the enclosed system, which allows a more controlled environment, standardized light levels, reduced distractions. And moving on to the next slide, the other study that we've been really excited to do in cooperation with Olleyes and also with the University of Alabama is a group of patients who have these devices already at home and are doing weekly home perimetry. And this is just one such patient, 3 weeks in a row, the same field. We all know that visual fields vary, but what I think will impress all of us is how similar these 3 visual fields a week apart are. This is what we're finding, very, very good correlation week to week to week. But I'm excited about this, even if the correlation wasn't particularly better than what we expect from standard perimetry. I'm still excited about this, because many of you may be aware of the work by Anderson, published in Ophthalmology about 2 years ago, where they looked at weekly perimetry at home versus standard perimetry every 6 months in the office. And what they showed was that when you're doing weekly perimetry, because you have so much more data, it's so much easier to discriminate between the variability week to week or test to test versus long-term change. And so in their in the researchers from the University of Melbourne, Anderson and co-authors, they found that weekly testing could pick up visual field progression 1 to 1.5 years earlier, even with fast progression, 1 to 1.5 years earlier than standard perimetry testing in the office every 6 months. So I think this may give us the tools to really better monitor our patients with more data, more understanding of what their disease is truly doing, rather than these periodic spot checks of visual function, which we know to vary. Moving on to the next slide, I just want to acknowledge that we're happy to work with Olleyes and a host of other excellent institutions, Vanderbilt, University of Alabama, I mentioned, New England Eye Center, and Stanford. Great people to work with Olleyes, who are trying to drive this technology forward and helping all of us to understand better how this technology performs compared to other technologies we already understand, and how it might fit into the care of our patients. So really an exciting time.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, for that really nice presentation, going through a careful examination with scientific rigor, looking at the technology compared with our gold standard that exists out there. So our last speaker is Dr. Chip Faggodow, and he's actually got a busy anterior segment. He's a corneal specialist practice with this part of a group practice in Dallas, Texas. And he's going to kind of give you the clinical practice kind of version of incorporating this into how it's used on a day-to-day basis in caring for patients. And my question for Chip to kick off is, you were intrigued enough to get the visual unit, and why did you get it? And has it really helped and satisfied your initiative in getting the device? So if you can just quickly start off with that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I can bias the discussion by expressing my enthusiasm at the outset. It's been an extremely useful tool in our office. I became interested in it by way of some discussions with you, of course, but also an introduction to Alberto. I was impressed by him immediately, and Jonathan Myers and I and Michael Boland and Rania from Wilmer and Rania Bosch from Bascom Palmer had worked together to put together a chat group early in the COVID isolation period when we all went into sequestration, and we're feeling unhappy about our lack of productivity and worried about where to go with the telemedicine component that was inevitably going to become part of our practices. The three of us and a few others, or the four of us and a few others, put together this chat group, and the issue of long distance management, including the possibility of working with a new visual field device, was introduced by several of the people who participated in that chat group. The fact is that at this point, we're back in our office, and we're very, very busy and seeing almost the same number of patients we had seen pre-COVID. One of the aspects of patient flow that has been advantaged by newer technology is the glaucoma subset of patients who require visual fields, many of whom were late in getting their fields. But the VISUALL device has been instrumental in allowing us to catch up and to do so in a way that has been very pleasing to our patients. So it was the nature of the moment of isolation and looking for the technical tools that could be useful for us long distance. There were a number of people, for example, who talked about, and we actually followed this advice, talked about taking asynchronous or the use of asynchronous pressure measurements in glaucoma patients, bringing them in and allowing them to do so with appropriate PPE and management of their safety, but at the same time reinstitute follow-up, which had really been decimated for an extended period of time. So it was the nature of the moment and the availability of the technology and the appeal, which I'll be happy to outline with regard to the reception of the new technology by our patients. The pandemic, of course, has turned all of us around in terms of the way to manage our practices better. I can identify, for example, in our own office, we bring patients in and move them directly to an exam room. We no longer use our waiting rooms and are trying to deploy them for other purposes. But the bottom line is ophthalmology has been really negatively impacted, perhaps more than some of the other fields. So we've been forced to be creative and inventive in getting back to work. The telemedicine component of medical care, of course, has skyrocketed. There are a number of extant companies that are doing extremely well in the telemedicine field. We all know that it's going to become an increasing component of our day-to-day care delivery, and again, circumstances force us into an analysis of new opportunities that we might not have moved to so quickly in other circumstances. We've done in our office since we've gotten back to work 330 tests. I can't say whether or not that's an increase or decrease compared to what it might have been pre-COVID, because there are too many variables, too many factors at play here, including the fact that number of our patients were slow in coming back in a circumstance where the virus is still uncontrolled. The fact is that our technical team adopted the new technology eagerly. We have a young man in our practice, one of our technical leaders, Michael Villarreal, who has become quickly knowledgeable and quickly facile and easy with training other of our technical people. The fact of the matter is that the mobility is really striking. There was an earlier slide that depicted a user leaning back in a lounge chair, and the ability to be mobile with this technology is one of the key attractants both for our staff and the patient population. I have a number of sort of data points to deliver with regard to the practical aspects. Wi-Fi in your office, for example, has got to be boosted in some circumstances. There are going to be areas in your office that are more or less conducive to ease of use of the machine. And you may find that you're moving patients around from time to time. But the bottom line is the mobility is certainly an extraordinary feature. The comfort factor is significant. Our patients are able to sit comfortably instead of having to stay stationary as they would in the case of the Humphrey field. And for patients with head and neck problems, it's been particularly useful and well received. There are English and Spanish instructions available. That's been useful to us in Texas. And additionally, we found as a minor issue, the use of artificial tears is reduced to some degree, and so the patients require less assistance as they're taking the test. The technical ease of the instrument is significant. I would say that most patients overwhelmingly prefer the VISUALL device, find it easier to maintain fixation and to stay engaged. We've had a few patients who have been resistant. That tends to be the older patient, and in some circumstances they've been intimidated by the VR headset, but I think that's only been identified in a limited number of patients and is not really a significant problem. There's a little bit of a learning curve that we take these patients through, but they seem to adapt quickly and again, eagerly. The device, of course, has presented some problems in the COVID moment with regard to the masking of all of our patients. We have quickly discovered that taping the superior aspect of the mask is important by way of decreasing fogging of the instrument. The fogging of the lenses is also countered with anti-fog solution and of course the cleaning of the instrument, which, by the way, is also much easier than in the case of the traditional visual field machines. We have technicians, or actually a specific technician who's oftentimes involved with the visual field machine and also using the OCT. And she's discovered that by way of using this new device, she has more time to accomplish more within a time frame. So the bottom line is that in terms of ease of use in the office, both from the angle of the patient and from our technical personnel, it represents an advance. Is it useful in every circumstance with every patient? No. Does every patient prefer it? No, but most do. We see smiles on the faces of our patients who are going through the visual field process to an infinitely greater degree than we did previously. I think many of you in the audience have had a long time experience similar to my own, which is that most patients hate visual field testing. This device changes their minds to a certain degree. And I'm impressed that it's going to become more utilized as we begin to understand how the patients use it at home, and as Jonathan just mentioned, how they perhaps in some cases use it week to week to monitor their glaucoma and generate better data and an opportunity for better care. So big net plus in our office. We're delighted to have access to it. I do want to mention that the responsiveness of the Olleyes team has been exceptional and has, I think, significantly contributed to the experience that we've had in our office, which again has been highly favorable. This just demonstrates our office manager who's taking the test, and again, very pleased with the experience. Short story: automated, comfortable, disinfectable, accurate, validated, and I think it's going to be a good ROI. It's going to be a very useful tool for us. I anticipate that utilization in our office will expand, and that our patients will get the word out, and it will be a practice grower to boot. So I appreciate the opportunity to identify to this audience, this interested audience, the practical benefits that we've experienced in our own practice.
Well, thanks, Chip. That was really a down-to-earth kind of experience that you've had, and with a lot of great pearls for people who are going to start using this type of device. So this is a question for all of you again. Does a remote perimetry bring additional value to the care of your patients? Yes, no, and not sure yet. And with that, after you kind of plug in for that vote, maybe we can have the Q&A up for all of our speakers so they can answer some of the questions out there from the audience. But I'd like to thank all the speakers for their kind of points that they've raised. They're all really very valuable, hopefully, for the audience. And again, just a word of thanks to Shane for keeping the program moving here as well as he has.
I have been answering some of them, let's start from the bottom up. With weekly testing, how is the billing managed? Do you use the 99457 or the 92083? If you are going to test the patient weekly, then you probably would like to use the 99457. The 56, it's only for those testing that will be more frequently. For example, if you are going to use it every other day, and very likely that doesn't fit in the for the follow-up of glaucoma. But if you're going to do weekly, then yes, the 99457 might probably going to be the most appropriate one. What algorithm is used? We develop and continue developing our own algorithms, but of course we're taking advantage of all the work that has been done so far, and so we incorporate different aspects of different already well-known algorithms. It is a little bit complicated, and don't mean disrespect. It could take us the whole night. So what I appreciate, Freddie, if you are interested, it will be my pleasure, to have a conversation about it. How do you disinfect?
Oh, why don't you hold that question, because we can probably get the other two guys. And there's some really good questions here I wanted you to get answers since you're there.
Go ahead.
So specifically the home system, the H system, do you incorporate visual acuity and color testing?
So currently it includes perimetry and acuity. Currently the color test, it's performed in the tablet that comes with the device. We're currently doing the work to integrate on the Unity part of it, so the headset. Once it is included, then it will be available. It shouldn't be long.
And another question is, does your device have eye tracking?
We have different models. We have a tethered model with eye tracking. We have an untethered model without eye tracking. And we have also a new model that we're really working with that is untethered with eye tracking.
And well, last two questions for Alberto, and we'll give you a breather. What about large or small PDs, and how do you account for corrective lenses?
So the device has a single generator, single stimulator per eye. So 2 stimulators, which means that each eye is stimulated separately, and that brings several advantages. First, no need to patch. Second, no need to do monocular tests, so we alternate, and that allows some kind of speed up on the test. But also, if a patient has let's say one eye, at least one eye with there's a central scotoma, well, the binocular testing allows a much better fixation because the other eyes serve as a fixator. So this is a great advantage, because when you patch an eye and try to do a visual field on a patient with a central scotoma, it's very challenging for the patient to keep fixated. And what it brings me to the answer to the question, sorry for the long answer, is that if the range goes between 50 and 64, if you have an extreme PD or if you have convergence insufficiency, then you can opt for a monocular test, and that fixes it. And the lenses, the headset was built with enough room inside, so you can either use their own patient's glasses, no bifocal, trifocal, or you can use small frames within the headset. There is enough room to do that.
Thanks, Alberto. Maybe we can get both Chip and Jonathan back on for a couple of questions here for them. And Alberto, I think we can fit everybody in there too, as well. Chip, are you there?
Here.
While we're waiting for Chip there,
There you go.
what kind of programs are currently available that you're testing these patients? What is the comparable program to what you would be doing with the Humphrey or an Octopus?
10-2, 24-2. Same as you would
Jonathan,
use.
is that what you've been using as kind of the...
I mean, standard glaucoma field is 24-2.
And that's what we've tested too, mainly is the 24-2, and we've done it both in the supra threshold screening mode, which both eyes come in. I did one today. Patient did both eyes 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and for a supra threshold test, and then we've also done the full thresholding on the 24-2.
So since you brought that up, what is the typical test time for patients on the standard field that are, let's say, normal or have mild field loss?
Well, so in our study of 100 patients, 102 eyes, that Dr. Reza did, there were 50 eyes that were normal, and in those 50 eyes, the average time for the C to standard was just under, I think it was just under 6 minutes, and this test was about, I think, 80 seconds longer, or maybe it was just under 5 minutes for the C to standard. And this test was about 80 seconds longer, just about 6 minutes, I think, for the normal eyes. Of course, that's for the full threshold. Of course, as we know, as people have glaucomatous field defects, that generally, for most testing algorithms, is a little slower. And indeed, for the people with more advanced glaucoma, the test times got up to 6 to 7 minutes for the C to standard, and about 8 to 9 minutes is my recollection for the VISUALL full threshold. So just a little bit longer with similar results. Again, testing both eyes together, as Alberto said, which I think is actually a more natural experience for the patients. And the other advantage of this is that the technician walks away. So although the test may be 60 seconds longer, the technician is free the whole time and doesn't have to be there at all. And that's been very popular among our technicians, I'll just say.
Chip, you had mentioned that it was great for patients that have neck problems. What do you mean by that?
Well, they struggle with the traditional visual field perimetry, and
Like physically fitting into the machine, you mean, or
fitting into the machine, and oftentimes complain vociferously about it. So the opportunity to seat them in a comfortable chair, the one picture that we showed with my office manager wearing the device, that's comfortable actually a chair for plastic surgery, but it's comfortable and can be moved in all kinds of positions, and it doesn't matter. They can take the test in whatever position makes them most comfortable. It's really quite something.
Alberto, how much does the unit actually weigh?
264 grams.
So pretty light. So nobody complains about it being heavy or anything like that in your experience, Chip?
No.
It is worth saying that the device should be, so one of the advantages of this model is that the battery was built in the back, so it balanced it's a very balanced headset. And also, we remember we had like a couple of patients that were actually complaining that the device was heavy. And what we noticed is that it was not well tight, and then the device was falling over the nose. So my advice to all users is that hide very well the headset, and that is when you really experience the light, how light it is to the device.
And how do you clean the device? How does that, in this COVID era, that's always a big issue in terms of safety. How do you clean it?
The device is fully disinfectable. We provide, of course, a protocol for the disinfection. It comes with the unit, and the only thing that we suggest to be very, very gentle is the lens. But the rest, you can fully disinfect it with the alcohol.
So, Jonathan, Chip, a minor inconvenience cleaning it up that hasn't posed a problem for the technical staff, and patients are pretty happy.
Well, I think compared to the cleaning of the Humphrey, it's a major advance. It's another aspect of the net gain.
Jonathan?
Our technicians have been using the same sort of cleaning wipes that they use on the chairs between patients to wipe this down. A disinfectant wipe. It's very, very quick. Yes.
All right, I think we've gotten to most of the questions here, and I apologize if we've missed anything. Somebody did ask a question that's for you, Alberto, is what algorithm is used, if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I already mentioned the algorithm is proprietary, and what we suggest is that we will be willing to answer that question privately. Having said that, we can tell that we take advantage of, as I mentioned before, of what is already public knowledge, and be used for for many years.
Another question is about battery life.
It's a rechargeable battery, and what we suggest is that every night, when you finish testing your patient, you plug it and you leave it charging for the night. I think there was a question about integration with the EMR, and I think it's very important.
Yeah, why don't you? I didn't see that, but go ahead.
Yeah, it actually, you can develop an ePDF at this point. So, and because it is a web app, you can upload, you can log into the Visual Cloud on the same computer you have your EMR, and then directly pass all the ePDF. We're currently working with several EMR companies. As you know, there are many of those, so it will take us a little bit to cover all of them, but that's the goal. The goal is to a seamless integration with the EMR.
Thank you. Any other comments, Jonathan? Chip? There are some questions here, Alberto. I don't know how you want to handle in terms of cost issues and whether people buy, rent. Do you want to give kind of a overall summary on what people are doing out there? That, I guess, is an important question.
Different companies trying to do the same. Some of them have rental models. Some of them have selling. We prefer. So what we are selling, what we are marketing, is a medical device. And a medical device, it's a serious matter. So it's not something that you rent and then okay. What we believe about the subscription model is that there is not commitment, and we would like to work with committed doctors. But if you're committed, we are your guys. We prefer, and that's basically the difference between buying and renting, just a commitment. So we prefer to work with commitment doctors.
Well, we're closing up on the time here, but I thought there's a question that did come up about for the home. I believe for the home unit, somebody's inquiring about, does a technician visit the patient to set up the instrument with them at home? Maybe Chip and Jonathan, how do you foresee that? Do you think technicians are going to go to the home, or are patients still going to be tethered in some way to the office? How is that going to work?
Well, I think by definition they're tethered to the office at one point or another during the year, but I would anticipate in most cases they'll be trained in the office, then utilize it at home. But home visits certainly could, be on the radar screen. I think I'm particularly excited by the point that Jonathan made about following these patients week to week. I've got a number of patients who would absolutely be interested in that. So it's going to represent a new subset of patients in our offices, I think.
Jonathan?
So we are training people in the office with the expectation that they're going to use it at home later. We unfortunately fear that there will be a second wave of COVID that will effectively reduce our ability to see our patients for a fair amount of time, and having people able to do this at home will be a big advantage. For the data that I showed you from our at-home study, that was actually launched during the darkest days of the first round of COVID when we were only seeing emergency patients. So all those patients received the unit in a box and had limited instruction over the phone on how to turn the thing on and slap it on their head and get going. And you can see even in those first fields of that patient with no in-person instruction, they did a great job. So I think this unit has a lot of features that make it pretty simple for the patient to set up with limited interaction, and it can be done remotely for some patients. Some patients have trouble finding the on switch on the computer. Those may be best trained in the office.
Thank you. And we're coming close to the end of our session here, and I have to let Alberto get the last word in here because I want to congratulate you, Alberto. You talked about this idea not that long ago with me, and you made this a reality. I congratulate you on getting a commercial product out there so quickly. That shows so much promise. One last question for you before we conclude and turn it back over for the program with Shane. Somebody want to know, how do you assess if the test was reliable? How do you do that? Is it the same way you do with automated perimetry in general, with false positives, false negatives, and so forth?
Yeah, the quality of the test, we follow the classic parameters. So we look into false positive, false negative, fixation losses. With the eye tracking model, then we look also for static fixation. But also we have different, so we are putting a lot of efforts on the development of a pediatric version of the visual field. Unfortunately, the pediatric population has been somehow underserved, and when we would like to help in this. So for that, what we're doing is a gamification of the process, and the stimulation remains exactly the same. So it's exactly the same parameter compared with regular Goldman 3, same exactly background like we're using for adults. But what change is the interaction. And this answer is related to the question because in this case, basically what we're doing is we're asking the kid to, with the handpiece that comes with the device, then they can manipulate some objects to keep fixating and move toward the area where the stimulus was presented. And because we can control all these parameters, we can tell with a very high certainty whether the kid first was fixating, second, whether the kid saw or not the stimulus, and third, what is actually the probability that the kid saw the stimulus. So we're playing with all this. This is still under validation at Vanderbilt Eye Institute. And we finished collecting all the data. And right now we are on the process of the analysis. So it shouldn't take long before it gets the
Well, again, congratulations, Alberto. I mean, you've really taken a very sound pathway with good science behind your device, getting good studies out there to show the benefit. And we've had some clinical evidence now that from studies done at Wills with Jonathan's group and also in clinical practice with CHIP, that this is a technology that appears to be here to stay with a really promising future for following our patients and providing care for them in ways that we didn't think were possible before. And also want to thank Keeler for partnering with you. I mean, it's wonderful to have a kind of a giant in the field working with you to make this device available to physicians around the world. I'm going to turn the program back over to Shane, and thanks again, David, for hosting the program.
Okay, I would like to say a couple of words before we finish. First of all, thank you very much for your words coming from you, and it really means a lot. But I have to say that this is not even close to being my job. This is a really team effort. I would like to congratulate my team that worked very hard, or have been working very hard with me during all these months. And, Freddie, Onak, George, and also special thank to all the scientists like you that spent it or took the chances to prove and test this technology with the rigors that it demands. So thank you very much to all of you involved in the development, and see if we can help better the patients and people that needs this kind of testing.
Thanks so much, Alberto. And Shane, we'll turn it back to you. And Ava, thanks again for your hosting tonight's evening. And I hope everybody has enjoyed it. I'm sure if there are any other lingering questions, I'm sure Alberto would be happy to answer
all the questions.
Thank you, doctors. Appreciate everything you were doing tonight. Speaking to the visual and the advancements that it's going to be making in the medical field coming forward. So it's very exciting. Thank everybody for joining tonight. Please, if you're interested in more, to hear a little bit more about the device, interested in a demo, the contact number there for Keeler, 610-353-4350. And there's a special promo code for you joining tonight. When you're doing your demo, definitely do a demo. You want to see what this is going to be doing for your office. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. It's up on the screen. And with that, I'll end the webinar, and I appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.